welcome to New Hope for Today. My name is Pastor Andrew Hise, and I'm the pastor at New Hope Friends Church in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And I pray this video finds you doing very well, and I hope that all of you have had a chance to take a look at the reading guide that we placed on the YouTube video and Facebook video last week. I have it here in my hand, and I hope you've been following along with this reading guide. It's just taking us through the New Testament letters that are there in the New Testament. And I hope you check it out and follow along with us so that as we go through, you can just be learning more and more about what the Bible really talks about. If you are following along with that, then you know that tomorrow we're going to be reading one of my favorite chapters in all of the Bible, and that is 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, this has been known by many names, and it's even been quoted on very popular sitcoms. I remember it being quoted on The Office when I used to watch that, and that used to be on Netflix. It's a travesty they took it off. But 1 Corinthians 13 is known as the love chapter. And it tells us the importance of love, that it is above really any other thing. It's the most important thing. And it really defines what love is. And the chapter begins like this. It says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing." Now, I think this is very telling about how important love is. I mean, some of the things he describes there in that first little bit of this chapter, I mean, are things that we would envy people for. I mean, somebody who has enough faith that they could just believe and a mountain would be removed, or somebody who could prophesy and say something is going to happen next week and they could get it right with 100% accuracy. Or somebody who can have an amazing speaking voice and just speak in an amazing way. Or even what we would see as something very good, someone who is very giving of their time and of their energy. All of these things are admirable traits, but he tells us that love is above all of those. In fact, at the very end of the chapter, he says this, "Now abide faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love." Now, we know this as the love chapter because he says the word love over and over again, and this is the Greek word agape. And it's very interesting to me that in the King James version of this, of course, there's many different versions. I just read you the English Standard Version, and they translate agape love because that's what it's translated pretty much everywhere else in the Bible, but in the King James, they actually translate this word agape in the Greek with the word charity. And someone pointed this out to me actually this past week as we were talking about teaching. We were talking about a lot of different theological things. And she was just basically saying, I really like the way the King James does it because love is supposed to be a giving of oneself that expects nothing in return. And I think that's a very apt description of what love should be. Charity literally means to give something to someone in need, give something without expecting anything in return. And in fact, the way that love is defined here for us, it's defined that very way. In verse 4 of chapter 13, he says this, "Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends." And I think charity is a great way to describe this idea of love here. And so often, I feel like we, especially in the church, are very deficient in the way that we love people. We often will do things for people expecting something in return for that thing. we won't give somebody something that they need, uh, be, especially if, and what we'll do, maybe we'll start off helping somebody because we know it's the right thing to do. And I think especially of this one gentleman that my wife and I, Megan, used to help in when we lived in Roanoke. He was a homeless man. He had lots of mental issues that caused him to be homeless. And so we would help him. We would take him places. We would do things for him. And our church really actually got behind us on this whole thing. And then as time went on, there was really no sense that he was progressing towards anything better. He wasn't getting any better. He didn't want to escape this homelessness. So many people just gave up on him. They were expecting that if they helped this guy, that if they gave him stuff, if they continued to give him stuff, that eventually he'd get to a place where we could say, okay, he's progressed. Where's the love in that? You can say, oh yeah, I gave up all this stuff and I did all this stuff for this guy. But what really we should have been doing is loving him without any idea that he could get better, any idea that he would ever get to a place where he would not be homeless. That's true love, true charity. It reminds me of this story that Kent Nurburn actually wrote. He is an author who actually has I'll link the actual story down below in this description. But he describes a cab ride that he says he'll never forget. When he was younger, he used to drive cabs in New York City or one of the bigger cities. I don't know exactly which city, but it was a big city. And there was one day he got a call for a cab at this place, and he pulled up, and the person was taking a long time to come out. And he was like, what is going on? Why is this person taking so long? Well, finally he calls the number back that called him, and a little old lady picks up the phone and says, well, I'm so sorry, I'll be right out. And so then he looks and he sees her struggling with a suitcase, and so he runs out, of course, and helps her, and this little old lady, probably in her 80s, is very grateful. Thank you so much for helping me with a suitcase. He said, and she says, can you just give me a moment? He says, of course, I'll give you whatever you need. And so they waited. He waited there patiently in the car for her. She finally came to the car. He helped her in, and she sat there, gave him a piece of paper with the address for a hospice care on it. She said, I'd like you to take me through downtown if you could. And he said, well, it's not the shortest way. And she said, I don't care. I don't have anywhere to be. I'm just going to hospice. She explained to him that she had no living family. And she really was sad because she was going to have to go and live in this strange place because the doctor had told her she didn't have much time to live. So he looked over at her and said, well, where do you want me to go? Started to drive, and without letting her know, he just quietly turned the meter off. After 2 hours of driving around to different places in the town, the place where her and her husband had gotten married, the place where they had raised their first child, the place where her husband held a job that he held for many years. After 2 hours of driving around, the little old lady said, I'm ready to go. And they took and got there to the hospice place, and of course he helped her into the place, and orderlies came out. She's sitting in the wheelchair, and the little old lady looked at him and said, how much do I owe you? He said, you don't owe me a thing. You don't owe me anything. She said, I don't know how I could repay that. And he went in for a hug, and she said, thank you. You gave me joy, and you don't know what that means to me. You see, this man, Kent, gave something expecting nothing in return. I mean, he knew he was going to have to make a living. He was going to have to get money somehow. But he did something nice for this lady, not expecting anything in return. I hope that today, that you will as you come across different people in your life, that you will do something for them and expect nothing back. And it doesn't matter how much you give of yourself. It doesn't matter how much they take from you. Now, of course, we don't want to get into the abusive situation, but it Doesn't matter how much you give. Love them, care for them, and expect nothing back. That is what 1 Corinthians tells us love really is. Love is charity. I pray a blessing on all of you. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.
New Hope for Today is a video devotional released on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is recorded by Pastor Andrew Hise of New Hope Friends Church. New Hope Friends Church is located in Goldsboro, North Carolina at 4451 U.S. Highway 70 East. New Hope for Today. Strength for today, hope for tomorrow.